When it comes to my sermons, I almost always write them out in a manuscript. Once in a blue moon, I might use some notes. And very rarely, I ad-lib my sermon after pondering the scriptures all week. The reason I write my sermons out word for word is twofold. First, I have a high appreciation of words, and I want the words in my sermons to be just right. Second, I have gotten into trouble or have misspoken on a few of the occasions I have tried to wing it. The best example of this happened in my second full year of ministry at First United Methodist Church in Tamaqua. I had gotten married in late December, and when the gospel lesson for today rolled around the following spring, I decided I would take a chance and just use a few notes as I delivered my message. The topic then, as it is today, centered on the phrase, "And you are witnesses of these things." I began my sermon by talking about the kinds of things people witness in their lives. Like crimes or traffic accidents or great moments in human history. And then I said, not thinking about the words as I spoke them, I witnessed something on my wedding night that I never thought I'd see. Now, at the moment I spoke them, I had no clue that these words would be taken in any way but the way I intended them to be taken. What I was talking about was the fact that I saw my wife actually say the words "I do" when the pastor asked if she would take me to be her husband. But when I said I witnessed something on my wedding night that I never thought I'd see, well, the minds of the congregation went someplace else. Bob Ackles, one of the wonderful members of that church who was serving as an usher that Sunday morning, was sitting in the back of the sanctuary with his two nieces who were chatting away like they normally did. And he later told me that when I said what I said, he turned to the girls and told them to be quiet. He said, "I want to hear what the pastor's going to say next." So that's one reason why I always use a manuscript when I preach. I make far fewer verbal faux pas when I see the text in front of me. That, and as I said before, words are important to me, as they were to the writers of today's scripture. Take Paul's words in our reading from the letter to the church in Thessalonica. Most biblical scholars believe that 1 Thessalonians is perhaps the first book to be written in the New Testament. In fact, almost all of Paul's letters were written before any of the Gospels we have had in pen. Another thing to remember about these books is that when we read them, we are actually reading somebody else's mail. Paul writes his letters to individual churches, sometimes directly to individual people, and so at times they can be rather personal. Our reading today is an example of this. At one point, Paul writes, "But we were gentle among you, like a nurse tenderly caring for her own children. So deeply do we care for you that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves, because you have become very dear to us." I love what Paul says in these verses, especially that last phrase, "So deeply do we care for you that we are determined to share with you not only the gospel of God, but also our own selves." And that, it seems to me, is the essence behind what Jesus means when he says to his disciples, "You are witnesses of these things." You see, to be a witness to the gospel, to be a witness of the good news we find in Jesus, is not just to talk about Jesus. It's not just telling people that God is great and good. It's not just saying to others that they need to accept Jesus as their personal Lord and Savior. While these things may indeed be good, they are only part of what Jesus means when he says we are to be witnesses. A good witness not only speaks the good news, he or she lives the good news. In a sermon on this passage, the Reverend Emily Heath recounts her experience of being a witness. She says, I had to be a witness once. It wasn't for a criminal trial or anything. That's serious. But I had stopped to help someone after I saw a fairly minor car accident. No one was hurt, but the two drivers disagreed about who was at fault. And the police asked me exactly what happened. I stood there trying to remember every little detail. I didn't want to give the wrong information and then let the wrong people be at fault. Then Reverend Heath contrasts her experience as a witness with the experiences of the disciples. She says, now being a witness, the way the disciples were asked to be a witness is a little different than the witness I was. The police officer came and I gave a report of what happened, and she asked how they could call me if the case went to trial. And I gave my number, but I never heard from them. That day, I got back in my car and went about my business. I assume it all worked out. I haven't really thought about it since. And then she makes her main point. But for the disciples, when Jesus told them that day that they were to be witnesses, something else happened. They couldn't walk away. They couldn't forget. They couldn't just give their police report and wait for a call to testify that they may or may not come. These witnesses could not be passive. They were now part of the story. Now here's a little something more that underscores the importance of words and of using them correctly. In Greek, the language the New Testament was written in, the word for witness is martys, from which we also get the word martyr. Originally, to be a martyr was to be a witness. And through the centuries, we've come to associate the word martyr with a man or a woman dying for a cause. Usually, it's his or her faith. And there's a good reason for that association. So many of the early Christians, including perhaps 10 of the remaining disciples, ended up dying for their witness, literally dying for their belief. And so when we hear martyr now, we think of someone who has paid the ultimate price. But being a martyr in the sense of being a witness isn't about getting killed for your belief. And since we live in a country where freedom of religion is, no one is going to get killed for us being Christians. But that doesn't mean that being witnesses isn't hard. It can be terribly difficult to be a witness because a good witness knows that their words must be backed up by their actions. And so often this entails dying, not in a literal sense, but it is about death of another kind. Being a good witness to Jesus is about dying to our own selfishness, our own passiveness, and our own pursuit of lives of comfort instead of lives of meaning. Being a good witness is all about dying to the worst parts of ourselves and instead finding new life in Christ Jesus. In other words, this is about choosing to live your life as a witness, and not the kind of witness who can go home and forget about it after the police report is filed, but the kind of witness that the disciples were called to be, the kind of witness who not only sees what happened and not only tells what happened, but who is also so transformed by what happened that he or she can't help but become a new person because of it. A good witness for Jesus Christ can't help but act like the person who has seen in one way or another and experienced the risen Lord, and their lives and their actions reflect it. So let me ask you a question. When you think of witnesses to Christ, who do you think of? Are they the early disciples, Peter, Paul, and John? Are they figures from church history like St. Francis, Martin Luther, or John Wesley? Are they Christians from the last 100 years who have done great things like Mother Teresa or Martin Luther King or Billy Graham? Do you have someone or some people in mind? Now allow me to say this. While these good folks were and are all witnesses to the risen Christ, they aren't the only ones. In fact, this church is full of potential witnesses. And in order to be a good witness to Christ, you just need to do this. You need to live your life in such a way that others look at you and see God's grace and love at work in you. You don't have to do something great in the sense of feeding a nation or winning civil rights for downtrodden people or starting the Protestant Reformation. You just need to do the small things with great love for Jesus. Your purpose in life and everything you do is to remember Christ's call to the disciples and to you. You are witnesses. You're the ones who tell the story of Christ's grace and love by words, but more importantly, by what you do and how you live. This is true in the way you raise your kids, the way you love your family. It's true for the way you work, the way you volunteer, for how you treat your neighbors. It's true in the way you decide to use the things God has given you, how you use your talents, how you spend your money, how you share your excess. It's true in every choice and decision you make. And know this, being a witness is going to look different for each one of us. Growing up, the members of my childhood church would often go witnessing for Jesus door to door. They'd knock on doors and try to convert whoever answered, usually by preaching fire and brimstone and by trying to literally scale the hell out of people. It wasn't long before I decided that wasn't the kind of witness I wanted to be. But it wasn't until later that I came to understand that being a witness to Christ seldom involves words, but always involves actions. I understood that being a witness to Christ meant living into the greatest commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and to love your neighbor as yourself. It means that in this world, it so often feels like Good Friday. I'm supposed to witness to Easter with my life. I'm supposed to witness that the destruction and hate and fear of the world do not win, and that God has created hope where there was only despair, grace where there was only judgment, and new life where it seemed that only death reigned. That's my calling, and it's yours as well. It's the calling and job of every Christian. One of my favorite theologians, Frederick Buechner, has this to say about resurrection and the effect it should have on the followers of Jesus. He writes, "What really matters is not so much what happened then as what happens now, what happens in your life and my life, what happens in the world, what happens the next 5 days or the next 5 years of human history. Is God making God's self known in some powerful and saving way among people, even people who don't give a hoot about God? And to this I would add, am I helping to make God known by what I say and what I do?" Our gospel lesson this morning ends after Jesus ascends into heaven in a few verses that follow what we read. This is Luke's way of telling us that Jesus is no longer with us physically. While his hands and feet may not be present among us, the ministry of countless hands and feet bear witness to Jesus' living presence. Jesus may not appear among us and ask to eat some broiled fish, but his presence is tangible in soup kitchens, around the kitchen table, around the altar table. His presence is felt whenever one of his followers lives their lives as a witness to his great love and grace and mercy. The most convincing proof of the resurrection is the daily witness of the faithful, that Christ still lives and his work continues in what they themselves do. Or as I've said before, we are the evidence of the resurrection. Amen.